And this week, we're starting out with Meltzer going out of his way to put you over again. Following a house show match with you and Virgil facing Hogan and Bigelow, we have this in the February 15th Observer. Without question, DiBiase is the single most perfect opponent for Hogan in this country as far as working. He has this knack for getting the most out of Hogan. So, Ted, we discussed it last week on the podcast. Hogan wasn't necessarily considered the best ring technician out there, but you were at the top of your game. Did you feel like there was some kind of a trick to getting the best out of Hogan, or what was your method when you climb into the ring
Not,
with him?
not really. I never had any problem with the Hulkster, and it was kind of like, um, it's, I guess, in terms of wrestling psychology, you know, how do you as a heel, work with a big guy?
Mm-hmm.
And that was the deal. It's kind of like, Hulk Hogan is not a guy who should ever be doing hip tosses and reverse arm locks and on the mat wrestling. I mean, that's not what big guys do. And so, I try to tailor my match with him and anybody else that size. It's kind of like, uh, it's like I look at it from a realistic view. If like I get in the ring with this guy and we lock up, and then I would have him just, I said, push me off, and he'd push me off, and man, I'd take a bump
Mm-hmm.
and get back up to my feet and go whoa, and then circle around and make it obvious to the people that I'm thinking. I'm thinking like, what do I have to do to get this guy, and or I would, I'd grab a headlock on him, and he could actually push me off of a headlock or pick me up and kind of toss me away. And anyway, it was just the psychology of it. But I never had any trouble with the Hulkster in terms of what he could do and what he couldn't do. And just anybody that I wrestled, I always looked at that. I mean, I would, and this is old school. I would study guys. I would go and watch guys that I knew I was about to have, matches with
Mm-hmm.
if I hadn't wrestled them. And I saw what they did well, and I saw what they didn't do so well, and I would incorporate all the things that I knew they could do well into the match, and I would try to stay away from things that, either I thought they shouldn't be doing as a big guy, or weren't or didn't do very well. And so that was just the way that was that's old school psychology, and it works. So
Man, I want our listeners to think about that for a second because, I don't suppose, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I would not guess that there were a lot of guys back in your era who were sitting down and watching film of their opponents. It was kind of like it seems like a chaotic, like, okay, you get to TV, hey, you're working with this guy, you go out there and you work with the guy, and next thing you know, you're in a program with him, and really, like, everybody's trying to get to the next town. But here you are, you're studying film on the guy. Did a lot of people do that?
well, it wasn't so much me uh, studying film. I mean, if there was a show on, I would watch. But I mean, in the arenas and at the TVs or wherever I could, when I knew I was going to, that I was going in that direction, that I'd be in the ring with him, and I would just study. I'd go and watch the matches. It's kind of like, um, it's funny. I always did that. I mean, it was just an old school thing. I would always go out and watch the match right before my match, and people said, "Why?" I said, "So I wouldn't repeat what they did."
Mm,
If they had and they were, if like just for a small example, like, one guy in the match was, like work say wait working the arm, like, he's got his arm and he's doing these things that involve the arm, and you know or he worked a headlock or he worked a leg. Well, I would not work those body parts. I would go somewhere else. I would try to make my match, unique.
different, stand
So
out. And man, no wonder Meltzer is putting you over as being such a great wrestler. Like you're kind of going above and beyond here.